Hey kids, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to make an app that showed you the differences between the for loop, the while loop, and the time loop. They're all going to do the same thing, but how you can make them do the same thing while they're different loops. So here's how it works when it runs. When I click on run, when I press the for loop, this shows me the list of planets in a column with for loop at the top. When I click on the while loop button, shows me the while loop with the planets in the same way. Now, when I do a timed loop, it shows timed loop at first, and then it keeps adding on a planet every 2 seconds. So the code is over here on the right-hand side. You can certainly stop the video and look at it, but I'll build this from scratch for you guys. I'm going to reset my version history and start this puppy over. Probably should not have done that. So what I am going to do is I will pause this video and I'm going to get everything set up on the screen and import the planet data set, which we've used a number of times so far this past week. All right, so when I reset my version history, it deleted all of my work. I didn't think about that. So I imported the data set again. So that's good to go. Added my buttons and actually did it a little bit more efficiently this time because I just duplicated the original button after I got the size set up so my sizes were exactly alike. And then I've added my code to import the codes into that planet. So let's do the for button first. So I am going to drag out the on event button. And then what I want to do, this is going to be button 1. And when I click on it, I want to do the following. So the first thing I'm going to do is I would kind of like to reset this so there's nothing in the text. So I'm going to set the text of the text area to be equal to this kind of empty string. And then I am going to create an empty string. I will call this my for output. And this is also going to be equal to an empty string. And what I'm going to do is as I traverse the planet list at the top, as I traverse it using a for loop, I'm going to add each planet to this for output string. So for var index starts at 0, and as long as the index is less than the planet's list length, as long as it's less than, I'm going to increment my index by 1 every time. What I want to do is I want to take my for output and I want to add on to the for output. I could only spell. I want to add on the planets at the corresponding index. And then I want to add on this little escape sequence, this -n, which will create a new line for me. And then after the loop has been executed, I can set the text of the text area to be equal to the for output. And we're gonna run it and test it right now. And then we're going to move the set text command I just put there in line 9. We're going to put it inside the for loop and see how it changes. So let's run this. Let's click on for. And I think what I need to do is it did print out all of my stuff. I think what I could do is I go to the design tab. I could set the font size of this to be 20. I may even set it to be 25, so it might be way easier to see. Let's run this again. So run it, for loop. That gives me a nice large list. So I wonder what would happen if I put this set text command, if I cut it from there and I put it inside the loop, I wonder what would happen. So let's press run 4. And I think everything happens so quickly in the loop that you don't see that output string kind of being built up. So I'm going to take this out again and put it back where it was, so it really won't matter where you want to put it. Reset and run. I think the only thing that might be cool is if I had, I have an empty string there. If I said for loop and I went \n, that would give me 2 lines. Let's see what happens when I do that. Let's run it and click on 4, and that is nice. So let's do the while loop next. So the while loop is going to be very similar. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take an on event button and put a little space in there. And this is going to be button number 2. When I click on it, I want to do a couple of things. Now, when I'm doing, I really want to do almost everything that I did up here. So I'm going to take all this stuff up here. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it down in here. The only thing that's going to be different is this for loop. And when we do a for loop, or I'm sorry, when we do a while loop, we need to initialize our index variable. So I want to make that equal to 0. And then while the index is less than the planet's length, while that's the case, I want to do all of this stuff. And the only thing I need to add to this inside the loop is I need to add on 1 to the index every time. So I need to go index plus plus. And this should be all I need. I'm going to backspace those a little bit so it looks a little neater. Let's click on reset and run. Oh, I forgot to do this. I probably should make that while loop. I would have noticed that eventually. All right, let's reset and run. So here's my while loop. And here's my for loop. Hard to tell them apart other than the for loop or the while loop. All right, let's do the timed loop next. So with the timed loop, we are going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and reset this. And we are going to do the same kind of thing. I'm going to drag out an on event button so I can start with that. And I believe this is going to be button number 3. Oh, and when I click on it, I want to do stuff. And so I really want to do a lot of the same things that I did up here. So I want to create a variable, and I'll call this the timed output, and I will initially set it equal to timed loop. Oh, and I better add that to it. And I think I also need to set the text. Of course, I only need to do this one time of the text area. And I need to set that equal to that empty string. So this is good. So in a timed loop, it's kind of like a while loop. I need to initialize my index variable. So var this index, I'm going to set it equal to 0. And now here's where the timed loop starts. So timed loop, I want to add a planet every 2 seconds. So I type in 2000 milliseconds. and then there is a function that is going to run. So this is very similar to the event function here when we click on the button. So what I would like to do is I want to take my timed output that I set equal to the timed loop at the top, and I want to go plus equal. I want to add a planets at this index, and then I want to concatenate with it that escape sequence. Oh man, I did not do that correctly, did I? There you go. Oh, there you go. So I got that there. So that's going to add the planet to that time list every time. And then I want to set the text. I'm going to do this inside. I want to set the text for the text area 1 to this timed output. And now this is where, like in a while loop, we incremented it right here inside. We need to do the same thing, but we can't do it as easily because we need to use an if-else statement, because we need to stop the loop when we get to the end of the planet list. So we just can't use a very simple inequality like we did up here. So here's how we do this. We go if the this index is less than the planets.length. So as long as I haven't gotten to the end of the planet's length, I can take this index and increment it by 1. Else, I need to stop the timed loop. And that is all we should need. This should take care. I think I need to add a semicolon there, but that should do the trick. So let's run this. Let's do the timed loop. So there is the timed loop with Mercury. I don't know why that doesn't show up. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a planet every 2 seconds. And let's make sure that Pluto shows up, and let's make sure there's no error. Sometimes I get an error down here at the end. And if I do get an error, I'll know what it is. But there is no error. Oh, it's undefined. Okay, so here's what I need to do. I always forget this. I need to make sure that there is room to add an index. So I need to actually go -1 for the length here in this timed loop. And let me change the time to 1 every second. How about that? And I don't know why. Oh, I know why. I should have had the text area come after this, but that's okay. No big deal. Let's run it. And let's do the time loop. So time loop, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and that should be it. There's no errors. So yeah, I have to do this. I have to make sure there is room to add one more to the index. So I've got to put a -1, and I always forget that. All right. So those are the 3 loops. Those are the 3 loops that you can use to print out the planets.